Hello again. It's Talbot Davis, the pastor at Good Shepherd United Methodist, and I continue to be really glad that you have grabbed this material and then you've gathered together with family or gathered together with friends or gathered together with family and friends, and together you are growing in your living relationship with Jesus Christ. And this time you're doing it all under that heading of the Jesus effect. What impact does Jesus have on people he encounters on the way to the cross and ultimately through to the resurrection as we journey towards Easter at Good Shepherd? And before we dig into today's story, which is just a vintage one from Luke chapter 23, I've been thinking about tests, because isn't it true that especially when you're young, tests measure your progress through life? When you're really young, you have the spelling test and then pop test and geography test. And a little bit older, you get to the end of grade test. And then in middle school, you get the first final exams. And then high school, you got SAT tests to decide if you're going to go to college, where you're going to college. And let's say you land in college, and more tests at the end of every semester. You know what it's like to go through all of that testing. And some of you even had to take tests to get into grad school. And I know in my case, to let you be a Methodist preacher, they actually have ordination exams, which somehow, apparently, I passed because here I am. And then you get to be a little bit older. And other than a driving test, usually that season of testing is behind you unless you're a project manager and you got to get certified in Six Sigma. I know how you all are. This one more level of testing that seems to define your life. But as I've really thought about testing in all of that, the most difficult tests, I think, are the ones other people put you through that you really have no opportunity to pass. I remember years and years ago, I got an email from somebody I'd never met, and it was on a very difficult, dicey sort of subject. And the punchline of the email was, well, will I be welcome in your church? And all of a sudden, it was this incredible dilemma. Do I say, well, sure, and maybe set myself up for failure, that we would let that person down in some way? Or then do I say no and risk a whole different kind of failure, because there was such a delicate situation, so many dicey issues involved. And through all that test that I was put through on the email, I realized, you know what? Not every question has to be answered. Sometimes people ask you questions not because they want an answer, but because they want an advantage. Sometimes people put you to the test not because they want to see if you'll pass, but because they know you'll fail. And I have to believe that's what was going on with Jesus on the cross, Luke chapter 23. Because repeatedly, continually, the soldiers, the leaders, and even one of the criminals adjacent to him puts Jesus to the test. Jesus, if you are who you say you are, if you are the Savior, if you are the Messiah, if you are the King, then save yourself. If you are, then do this. And in each and every case, Jesus has this insight that took me years and years to figure out. Not every question has to be answered. Not every test has to be taken. Because those folks weren't looking for an answer from Jesus. They wanted an advantage over him. And they weren't hoping he would pass that test. They were praying that he would fail. And so it's so interesting what Jesus does. Through all of those questions and all of those opportunities, he refuses to answer. He refuses to take the bait. All until that moment when the other thief, because there's two of them, one on either side, and one is not like the other. And the other thief does not put Jesus to the test. Instead, he puts himself to the surrender. And he says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And all of a sudden, when Jesus answers, this day you'll be with me in paradise. Not tomorrow, not when I come back, this day. Which means that in the annals of people who've been saved by what Jesus did on the cross, this guy was number one. This day you'll be with me in paradise. It's suddenly so clear that Jesus' refusal is our restoration. And Jesus' sacrifice is our substitute. So if you're tempted to put Jesus to the test, don't. Put yourself to the surrender instead. Because he refuses to help himself. So you will remember to humble yourself. Have a great conversation.